let's give it up for Scott. Scott is here from Invaders from Mars. Scott MacQueen. Hey, Scott, let's bring you on camera here. Scott, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Wow, you sound amazing.
Just sitting here in the green room.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's bring up a proper background for you. Let's bring up a.
You don't like the background?
No, on ours.
No, on our channel, I want to get
I went to great
proper
trouble.
background. Wait, let me get this.
I was at Walmart all
afternoon
afternoon shopping for my props.
Oh my
No,
God.
I love that background.
Oh, you have Robbie the robot there. Oh, that's awesome.
Wait. Where is he?
Oh, nice. Oh my God, that's awesome. Scott, thank you so much for being here today. I was telling everyone before he came on, I am a huge fan of this movie. It disturbed me as a kid. I was incredibly disturbed by Invaders from Mars.
That's the universal experience. Welcome to the club.
I mean, it's also a film that has stuck with me, that even though I can look back and it's like, okay, well, some of the outfits were a little cheesy, some of the effects a little cheesy, but the thing that haunted me was the sound. The sound, you know what sound I'm talking about, right?
You're talking about the choir, the drones.
Yes.
As the people are drawn down through the sand.
Yes.
Brilliant writing that we believe was done by Morty Glickman. A cappella 4-part choir singing these amazingly dissonant harmonies.
But they're nightmare inducing. And I will say this, one of the worst things to do is to watch that movie at night. As a kid, I had to kind of force myself to stay up late to be able to see like late night horror movies, right? They started at like 11 p.m. Almost invariably when I was a little kid, there's no way I could actually stay awake for the entire movie. And this movie haunted my dreams. It's so effective. We've got, first of all, I also want to before we get to questions in the chat, if you have questions for Scott MacQueen, he's going to talk to us about the restoration. Tell us about this 4K restoration, because the movie it's available and it looks okay, but I'm dying to see what you do with the restoration.
Well, the picture had been very badly handled for the last 70 years for a variety of reasons. It was shot in Eastman color negative, which is fine, but then the printing was in an archaic process called Cinecolor, at that point Super Cinecolor, and it meant that the negative cutting lacked all of the optical effects, so dissolves and such between scenes are absent in the negative. Cinecolor, they made, like Technicolor, 3-strip duplicate black and white negatives of the 3 colors, and then their proprietary system printed those onto a black and white film that had special emulsions that were then toned in the colors, and the effects were all created and cut into those dupe negatives. So they're gone. They never kept the units.
Wow.
So you didn't have the titles, you didn't have any of the transitions, and then Reel 2 was completely missing from the negative when it was found. So we had to fall back, and all the intermediates I'm describing, they didn't survive either. So we had an incomplete negative for probably 65 to 70% of the film that's in beautiful condition, and from which we could retrieve excellent color. And the rest of it had to come from 70-year-old, heavily worn Cinecolor prints. And to top it off, the picture has 2 versions. It opened here in April of '53. They made a deal for foreign, and the foreign distributor didn't like the dream ending. They wanted a literal ending where the Martians are routed and everybody lives happily ever after. And they wanted the film longer. So they shot an 8.5-minute sequence of padded dialogue at the observatory, where they brought the kid back a year later. He's on, you can see he's starting to pass puberty. He doesn't feel the same as he felt a year before at 12. The wardrobe is cheap. The camera takes are long and belabored. It's all flatly lit, and the kid's wardrobe doesn't match. They've put him in. They gave him a sweater vest that he never wears, and we cut from him in his 1952 wardrobe to him in his 1953 wardrobe, back to him in his 1952 wardrobe. and he has a buzz cut kind of haircut in the new footage as well. And it's boring. All they do is talk about flying saucers and things that were in the papers at the time, like General Mantee, whose plane crashed, allegedly chasing a saucer, and the Lubbock Lights, and they keep showing you things. And then Arthur Franz drags out all these toys, says, oh, this is the Type 1 saucer, and this is the Type 2. And at one point, Jimmy goes, that's the one I saw. And after they've done that for 8 minutes, they cut back to they walk back and sit down in their chairs, boom. And on the time machine, they're back a year and a half earlier, wearing their proper wardrobe, and the movie resumes.
Wow.
So we had 2 prints of the film that were that version. So they didn't have the correct ending. And to add to that, the foreign prints made cuts in the film. Some of the footage of the army milling about in the mutants in the tunnels, which had been repeated footage added in America to extend the film here originally. So we were kind of between a rock and a hard place. So we found another source, which was a 1976 print from the hybrid reissue that was in Eastman color, and put all the stuff into one movie. But that print now is utterly pink. But we were able to take the scenes we needed and pull them back from there. And at the 11th hour, we checked again with the archives we dealt with, the National Film and Sound Archive in Australia, and we knocked again on the George Eastman Museum's door. And they said, well, we do have a second print here, but it belongs to a collector, and it's on deposit. And we would have to get his permission. And so the permission was granted, and his version was the original American version with the ending that we needed. So 5 different sources, we had to piece all those together. And you can imagine the 70-year-old prints were very scratched, very gouged. The prints, the scans we got from one archive, well, both the overseas archives and the one in Rochester gave us scans. They would not send us the film. Some of the scans were jumpy. I don't know whether the film was shrunken, but it did not seat calmly in the gate. It was hopping all over the place. And in some cases, we had to re-register shots electronically, which is very tedious and costs money. And in other cases, we had to fall back on that faded Eastman print and borrow shots from there. Everything we had on one of those for the foreign version had splices all through it. We were able to salvage 6 shots, and the rest had to come from a color-corrected Eastman print, which I think we have an example of when we're
let's first of all, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. Everybody has
good
questions for you. We will get to your chat questions for Scott. And I do want to look at some of this video footage, but we have a very special guest here, the star of Invaders from Mars. Jimmy Hunt is here to join us.
It's the boy.
Let's say hi to Jimmy here. How you doing?
Fine, Chris. This is Chris, right?
Yes, Chris and Alan, and Scott.
Oh, we know Scott. Yes.
Well, it's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to meet you. Pleasure to meet you, sir. That movie has terrified me since I was a kid, and it's such a pleasure to meet you.
Jimmy, we have another friend with us. Do you see who's behind me?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Hey,
He insisted on coming, so I couldn't say no.
my little buddy. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look. We want to continue our question here. We've got a bunch of questions from the chat. They want to ask you some questions. Let's take a look at some of the footage here. I'm going to throw up one of these video files, and maybe you can talk us through it here. What went into this incredible restoration? It's just really bizarre to me that, just like the other week, I'm looking to I caught the trailer somehow, and I'm like, oh, I should watch this movie. But here, let's check out. This is the comparison of the Eastman footage and the restoration. Let's take a look at this. Here we go.
This is one of the scenes for Europe, and on the right is the faded print we had to work from. All the colors leached out. We were able to revive the color from that very print to get it to look normal and remove the scratches and dirt. And this is where Jimmy's wearing the non-matching wardrobe that doesn't correspond to what he wore in 1952. This is the long sequence where they are looking at pictures of UFOs and pretty much marking 8 minutes of time to make the foreign distributor happy. He has a longer movie. Arthur Franz plays with ashtrays to show us a Type 1 saucer. Helena Carter, her makeup is not consistent with how lovely she looks in 1952. I don't know if you can tell from the distance that Jimmy's got a very fresh haircut. But
Yep.
when you see it in context, he's suddenly a year older, and he looks a year older.
That's amazing.
Well, still haven't lost my freckles.
Now, Jim will have to tell you the story about his freckles and how they got him into movies.
And this is the main title, and talk us through that.
Right. Again, this had to come off of a print because the titles don't exist in the negative. And here is a Cinecolor print as found. And again, you can see it's milky, it's hopping, it's got dirt on it, scratches, cinch marks. It's really kind of a pretty ugly thing. And here's our restored version of it.
Oh, wow.
Using that very footage you saw, stabilizing it, color correcting it, doing electronic dirt removal.
It's amazing what they can do. Like Peter Jackson has done
20
quite a
years
bit.
ago, you couldn't dream of doing this well. The tools just had not evolved, but
Mhm.
they're there now.
Scott did just such an outstanding job on this. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's better than when I first made the movie. You know, it's just really great.
Well, I mean, this is to me like just doing film restoration. That's like, I mean, it's preserving that history is just incredibly important. I want to get Alan. This is my colleague Alan Ing, the editor in chief of Film Thread. If you have any questions, Alan, I'm going to go to some questions in the chat here. But
Yeah.
have
I mean,
any-
was there ever a risk of not finding everything? And what might have happened in that case?
Well, there was that risk. There are 16 millimeter prints with collectors, which we wouldn't want to use because they're 25% of the film real estate of a 35 print. So they would have been very grainy, and they would have probably all been faded by now as well. Thankfully, it's something we didn't need to worry about. We had a couple of near misses until we realized that we could recover some shots from that faded print that Ignite has at UCLA. In the foreign versions, they didn't like a moment on the hillside where Dr. Blake, the lovely brunette in the white dress, has shown Jimmy and everyone else the electrodes they've taken out of the neck of the dead girl who's been controlled. And she tells him, oh, his parents have been operated on. See what you can do. And they're going to try to get the surgeons to remove them from his parents' neck. And he follows Milburn Stone, the doctor from Gunsmoke, over to the Jeep. And there's a cut in the foreign prints, but in the American one, he says, "Please hurry, sir." And the soldier turns and looks at him and pats him on the head, which gets a giggle from people. But we didn't have that. And to be authentic, we needed that. And thankfully, we were able to use that shot and shots for the ending from that faded print to fill in the losses.
We have a lot of questions in the chat. People are just Retro Nerd Girl says amazing restoration. Lagbait says that title card.
Yeah.
Fletcher Williams says this is amazing work. Liam in Wales says looks amazing. Party Pucks, wow, looks great. People are just like they're just ecstatic. But here's some of the specific questions that people are asking. Sparta 300 says, "I'm curious, what do you think about the progression in science fiction special effects from what you had to work with in the 50s and the leap George Lucas made with the original Star Wars in 1977?"
Jimmy, do you want to take that, or do you want to devolve it?
Well, you know, I want to say one thing here was the fact that after I got out of the movies and I retired when I was like 14, I had made 42 movies at that point, and it was one of those things that I was into sports. I wanted to play sports in high school. I couldn't do that and do movies. So I opted out of movies.
Here he was working with Jane Russell and Bob Mitchum and people like this, and he'd rather play baseball.
That's right. No, it was,
That's right.
hey,
That's why he's the great guy that he is, because he never went to Hollywood.
Silly me, you know. But no, and the thing is that after that, and I went through the typical teenage years, had hot rods and played football and baseball in high school, and same old thing. Used to drive up and down Hollywood Boulevard, on cruise night and do those kind of things. But in regard to that question, I didn't go back and really watch a lot of movies until my sons took me to see Star Wars, the original. And after I came out of that movie, I said, wow, movies are great again. And so that was, as I look back, I never thought that Invaders from Mars was such a terrific film. I had, like I said, there was others that I made I thought were better. But I still get fan mail from all over the world in regard to Invaders from Mars. And it's been that way for the last 70 years.
Wow.
I think one of the big differences between Star Wars, say, and Jimmy's movie, Invaders, is that Star Wars can be about special effects. They're very dominant, and there are a lot of them all the time, and they're big. Invaders is more of a people story, and the effects happen mostly in the last third, and they happen simply to advance the story on. You don't stop to watch a Death Star blow up. You won't have someone like Peter Cushing or whoever it is to make the comment about a million. Oh, Alec Guinness says a million souls have just cried out. It's not about that. You've got, and it was done for a budget. Star Wars has a pretty nice landing pad financially. Invaders was done. What did you shoot in, Jimmy? 3 weeks?
We did that in about 3.5 weeks, and I think they did it for under $300,000,
which is amazing. And what they had in spades was the talent of William Cameron Menzies, who is perhaps the greatest production designer of all time. His credits include Gone with the Wind and King's Row and The Devil and Miss Jones and so many pictures that you know and don't know, because he sometimes came on as a adjunct and didn't sign them. And he directed a handful of films. He was never as successful as a director as a visual designer, because his movies are like graphic novels, the angles and all. One of the angles that it's very interesting how we all seem to share the same response. One shot that's always bowled me over is when Helena Carter has passed out, and she's on the glass lucite table about to be have her brain probed by the Martians, and there's this swirling violet needle coming to her neck. And the shot is like this, and she's lying there totally oblivious. Everyone responds to that shot. The innocent sleeping woman with danger slowly coming up on her. It doesn't leave you. And the special effect there is just a mechanical device. The Martian and the Globe is an image. Our friend here, the Supreme Intelligence. Jimmy can tell you a fun story, because the Supreme Intelligence was played by a little person named Luz Potter. And Jimmy's family knew her. He walked on the set, and there's Ms. Potter sitting in her street clothes on an apple box with this thing on her head and all the makeup on. And Jimmy said, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Potter." Tell the story, Jim. His mom went to high school with her.
My mom went to high school with her. And all of a sudden, here she is, I got to work with a lot of little people in Hollywood. Because they were stand-ins and things like that. But yes, that was, she did a great job, her eyes moving back.
The eyes, yeah.
Yep.
That implacable expression. And for years we wondered, about that. And I used to have discussions in college with friends. Was it played by an American Indian, a Native American? We're looking at the facial structures, trying to figure out, and they always refer to it in the masculine. You don't know, and we found out I believe she was of Portuguese descent. Jimmy, is that her? Do you know?
Hey, she was Luz Potter as far as I was concerned.
Luz is an Hispanic name, but I'm told she's not Mexican. So, so she's got some non-Caucasian blood that gives her the look of the cheekbones, and under the gold makeup, that slightly different look because her features are not traditional American features. And all Munchies has her do is dart her eyes. She gives a command. She looks left. She looks right. We have a sequence of that, don't we? Of Jimmy encountering her in the globe.
I was not sent that, but I do have some. The question that keeps coming up.
I could send it to you if you'd like. Is it possible to email it to you?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, we could. I don't know how to get it to you right now. But we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
People are kind of going. So let's get some of these questions to you. But the main question that keeps coming up is, when does this become available? This 4K version.
The disc is expected to street in September of this year.
Okay.
There's a website Ignite has put up for advance orders.
Sure.
They're doing 1,000 units with a special commemorative poster that Jimmy will be signing, and that release is limited to 1,000. It's $70, including free shipping. Mm-hmm. Sometime later, there will be a wide distribution at a somewhat lower price point. It won't include the poster, and I'm not sure what other extras physically it may include in it. Though the disc extras, the featurette and interview with John Sayles hosting TCM, we are hoping to have on there the original trailer, the foreign versions that we saw the clip from, the foreign ending itself where Jimmy's taken back home and put to bed. That's a hoot, Jimmy. I don't think you're even in that scene. They used a close-up of him from the original shooting. And as Arthur Franz begins to make noise, Helena Carter puts her fingers to her lips and says, "Shh, the little man has had a busy day." And we get Jimmy sleeping and just fade out. He saved the world. And,
Scott, what's the website?
Let me see that I have the address handy here for you, and I will read it out to you.
Okay.
The website is...
I think it's Invaders From Mars 1953.com. Is that it?
In the main web, yes. The main
website
I found it. Is ignite-films.com.
Oh wow, this is a cool website. I just found it.
And if one wishes to beat the herd and order one of the 1,000 special units, which were issued to commemorate the TCM Film Festival, there is a discount code you need to enter, which is on the website. Invaders, capital TCM 2022 !
Wait, and, I'm gonna have to. What is that again? The discount.
Invaders with a capital I and then capital TCM 2022 ! And that will get you the discount code to save you the shipping. And you order that at one word, Invaders From Mars 1953.com. That's where you go to order one of the 1,000 special units. The main Ignite website is ignite-films.com.
Got it. There you go. So to check that out. Let's get to some of these questions. There's a lot.
Actually, is there going to be a screening somewhere, a special screening, or?
Well, there just was at the Turner Classic Movies Festival. The film debuted there last week with Jimmy and the family attending. We had a sold-out house, and John Sayles did the introduction. He's a director I admire tremendously, and when I heard he was introing the film, I couldn't figure out why, because this is the director of MacQueen and Return of the Secaucus 7 and Liana and 8 Men Out. And of course, he gives his lecture and he says, "Well, I saw this movie in 1962 on TV in black and white, and it scared me to death." He's another member of the club. John Landis made the same comment. He said, well, I can't use the phrase John used. It's a little too colorful. But everybody around 8 years old, right now we're part of a generation that caught it on those first TV broadcasts, and it has stuck with us for all those years.
Like I said, I saw it when I was a kid, late night, and it's haunted me ever since. We have some
Let's
comments.
get to some questions before these people get.
Yeah, they're coming in. I can't keep up, but let's get the comments here. We answered when it's available. It's coming out in September. You can pre-order it, and I do think like I actually got I got a restoration that Fox put out of the original Lost in Space series, which comes with like the first few episodes come with the commercials as aired in the 60s. So these kind of things like that are very limited edition, just a few thousand.
That's a very tough thing to do. When I was at Disney and we were doing Davy Crockett's, we wanted to do that, and there was a lot of concern from the legal department about doing that because of the sponsorships and all. Right. And I know at one point somebody in home video doing production for them wanted to include Peter Pan peanut butter commercials because they were sponsors. Disney had just done the cartoon, and they were told no by legal. So they contacted somebody at Peter Pan and they said, "We'd love to have you do that." And so,
I love when that stuff is preserved. I saw Leonard Maltin once give a presentation at the Telluride Film Festival.
I was there with Leonard. Yeah.
So do you know the presentation he does about like the Disney's Lost Treasures?
That was my presentation, not Leonard's.
Oh, okay. So I was
there.
I
at Telluride doing the Disney's Lost.
This is in the late 90s. So you were probably there.
That was me you saw. Hi.
Okay, you were there. I saw that more than
I wasn't just there. I was that presentation.
Okay.
And it went over gangbusters so much that Bill Pence had to find another slot to schedule a second showing because they turned so many people away from it.
What was this 90? Was it 97 or anyways? All I remember was it was one of the greatest things, and none of that stuff will ever be seen. It'll never be seen. It's locked in a vault. It's some of the stuff is even like a lot of the war propaganda that they use Disney characters in animation.
The war propaganda stuff was issued on DVD in a steel case set that Leonard hosted. Whether it will ever come back now, I don't know. But
it'll never come back. You know that what they're doing.
It's probably a collector's item, but they did collate all of the war shorts, and they issued them once in that there was a 5-package deal that Leonard did of Disney material. And Education for Death was on there, and Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire, all together, all of those wartime shorts.
Well, let's go through some of these comments here. We got when it's available, September. Patrick Lemire says, I hope we don't lose miniatures, matte paintings, and optical effects. Real light hitting real things has a special quality.
And he's right.
Musophonic Recording says, gonna have to buy a 4K player now. Internet Rec Room says, a golden era. And then let's see. Liam in Wales says, how hard was it to restore the audio?
The audio is fairly straightforward. We had sources on the 2 Cinecolor prints and on one of the other prints, and it was a matter of filling sonic holes where there were breaks. We chose our A quality, what had the best audio. It was one of the Cinecolor versions, and then denoising, declicking. It was pretty routine. There was nothing terribly complex about it beyond what you normally do with audio restoration. We did not have any music and effects track or music only tracks. Those would have been a great help if we had. They don't seem to exist. Someplace in the world there is an M&E. I did have a copy of an M&E, but it was off a cassette, and the sonic quality was so weak and muffled, it wasn't worth wasting people's time by trying to add it onto the disc, and it was too low quality to utilize in any way, shape, or form. Where I've had high quality music and effects tracks, like on some of the David Selznick titles I did, we often would replace whole non-dialogue sequences with the M&E because they were a generation higher in the old optical mix system. So they had less noise and more clarity. And we were able to do that in things like Garden of Allah and Rebecca. And it was a very, very trick thing to do and very nice and worthwhile. Invaders, we didn't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Well, Nate D says, I love this guy's stories. So there you go. And Fletcher Williams says, Invaders from Mars is such a classic. in Invaders, the effects were at the end more story driven. Do you see that now the story suffers to make way for effects, like in
I
modern
don't think
movies?
it does. I don't think it does.
No.
Yeah. James Kelly asks, "What did the actors get paid?" I don't know if you want to answer that.
It was my first starring film. Okay, I was always been with actor, and finally made the starring film. And I think I'm not sure because, of course, I never knew how much I really got paid. I have no idea, but I think it was like $1,000 a week.
Wow.
So nearly $4,000.
Yeah, and
Which in
no,
1952 was a very healthy piece of change.
Yeah, that probably was actually decent.
yeah.
Let's
But
see.
no residuals, right?
No,
No,
SAG did not have residuals in those days.
Yeah.
Why So Serious asks, when you restore a film, what are your feelings about the overseas cut?
I would never utilize it for public showing, but the scenes had to be preserved and they're shown as extras just for the curiosity value. We all know, most of us that know the film, we all know it exists. So you're going to want to see it for completeness' sake and for historical purposes. So we've included them there for that. But no, I would not put them back in the film. That was done once in 1976. There was a pseudo restoration done at that time, and they cut both endings together. So Jimmy starts running down the hill, and the dream montage starts. Then they cut to, the foreign version where they hide behind the tank, and they see the saucer lift off and explode in the sky, which is just a reverse printing and an overlay optical of the original landing. And then they dropped the observatory scene into it, so his clothes popped on and off. It was ridiculous. No.
Patrick Lemire says Invaders from Mars has atmosphere, visual, and sonic. Sparta 300 asks, did movies like Invaders from Mars help inspire Forbidden Planet?
I don't know that they did. Forbidden Planet was kind of an anomaly. That's, for those that don't know, the MGM picture released in 1956. It introduced our friend here, Robbie the Robot. He's spending his retirement with me. This is actually one of his children. The real Robbie recently sold at auction for nearly $1 million, I think. But that was probably on the boards for a long time. I don't know that Invaders made a lot of money. People that have looked into it tell me that a lot of the 1950s science fiction films did not make as much money as we think they did. But they must have made some because they kept on making them. And you don't repeat a formula if it's not making money for someone. Right. But they're very unlike, Forbidden Planet is very unlike Invaders. Right. It's set on a foreign world, and an American crew in the future lands on an outpost and finds the only survivor to be one scientist and his daughter, and a mysterious force is roaming the planet. It killed the entire crew, but he and his wife initially, and so it's a whole different spin. Very, very good film, fun film. Like Invaders, it's very studio bound. Yeah. And Jim can tell you about the sets on Invaders. There's a lot of diversity, don't you think, to the sets?
Yeah,
hillside, and you've got the police station and Jimmy's bedroom, but they're not as diverse as you might think they are. They shot the whole thing on the Mabel Normand stage at Republic Studios. Jim, tell us about that.
Yes, the hillside was on the stage, the police station, the house, just about everything that you see, except for some of the chase scenes with my parents when the MPs were chasing them. That was all done outside of Republic Studios. But most of that was all done on one stage. And
so they could just turn the camera around and you're on the hillside, and bing, you're in Jimmy's bedroom on the right, and bing, you're over here. You're in Kathy Wilson's house. It was fabulous how they. It was a very large stage, one of the biggest in Hollywood.
Right.
Jimmy, what were your feelings watching the restored print at CCM?
I was amazed because, of course, growing up I got married and had a family, and of course, for the people on the West Coast, there was the old $1 Million movie where they would show the movies, like all week long on Channel 11, I think it was. Anyway, and I would. That was the only movie I think I ever told my sons, "Hey, you guys got to sit down and watch this." But we never really talked too much about me being in the movies, because that was something that I did and I retired from.
Jimmy, you play Leif Erikson's son in 2 movies, didn't you? You're also in Sorry, Wrong Number, right?
Sorry, Wrong Number. He was my dad in that movie, yes.
Leif Erikson's the father in Invaders, and Jimmy had quite a moment with him during the filming.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you about that. Leif Erikson's a big man, and when he was in the scene where the police they go out to try to see if they can find the father, and they come back. Oh, I come in the house and I'm supposed to come up and hit a mark that they have, on the floor, and I missed the mark by about 2 inches. He turns around and swings, and he's supposed to hit me and knock me down, of course. So I'm all ready. When he comes that big swing, I'm ready to go down on the floor. Well, I missed the mark, so now I'm too close. And when he hit me, I went down. And I mean, boy, did I go down. And I looked up, and, that's when they said, print. That's it. We're going to take it. Because it really did. I mean, it knocked the heck out of me.
Well, here's a question from Fletcher Williams. What did you think of the remake?
Okay. I was all excited when they heard about the fact that they were going to do the remake. And in my life after movies, I was a industrial sales manager for a company, and we sold to all the aerospace firms. And one of the aerospace firms that I used to call on all the time was Lockheed. And I'd go in and see it, and I'd see all these engineers, and the one engineer was into movies, and he said, they're going to remake that movie. And I said, well, hey, that's great. That's really cool. And he said, you should be in that. You should really be in that. So he kept writing to the production office, I guess. And finally, they agreed, and they had me come out, and I did a kind of on-set interview with Tobe Hooper, the director. And he said, yeah, okay, we'd like to have you do a cameo role for us, be the chief of police. So I agreed to do that. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so good, because now they have all these special effects and everything's going to work out just great. It's going to be fantastic. Unfortunately, they didn't have Menzies directing it. They didn't have it was still going to be a dream sequence, but it just didn't work out. And unfortunately, that was the only movie in my whole career that I got paid any residuals on. And so, thank you very much. Every once in a while, the Screen Actors Guild sends me a check for like $9 because people have watched it on pay TV somewhere. And but no, it just didn't come out. It was really
Jimmy, in your scene, you do meet an old friend. Is that correct?
Well, speaking of that, I actually have the scene. We can watch it if you like. Let's do that. And then I've got probably 5 or 6 more questions, if you don't mind.
I understand Svengoolie is running this remake Saturday night, so and maybe all it deserves. But
all right, well, here we go. I was just sent this, so let's watch it. This is the scene that you referenced earlier, so let's take a look at that. Here we go. It's labeled Supreme Intelligence Mind Probe.
Well, this is not the Tobe Hooper movie. This is Jimmy demanding of the intelligence that he lets Helena Carter go. And that's Luz Potter with the amazing movement.
Great eyes, yep.
And there's the high-tech mind probe machine that's going to insert the gadget in the back of her neck. And and take her mind and make her a robot.
Nice. Let's get back to some of these questions here, because there's a lot. And this is an interesting one from Turo. And I actually agree with him. 2005's War of the Worlds by Steven Spielberg looks like it took the trees and fencing background look and feel in the fighting begins scene, almost straight from Invaders from Mars. There's even tanks and military. I felt that too.
I think Turo is a very wise man. And there's a TCM documentary nearly 20 years old called Keep Watching the Skies about 50s science fiction. And Mr. Spielberg's interviewed. And he says, Invaders from Mars, man, that turned my world upside down. And then he tells a story about going to see it as a kid in Phoenix, Arizona, 5 times.
Wow.
So I think Mr. Turo is onto something.
There was something about it that was very reminiscent. It was definitely
now the trees and the fencing are Menzies. That's a real hallmark of Menzies' work. You see it in Our Town in the opening scenes where the narrator, played by Frank Craven, walks up a hillock on a fence and stands there to introduce the story. And there's the bare tree. Gone with the Wind, Scarlet and Red are fleeing on the eve of war, and they stop on a hillock with a split rail fence and have their goodbye love scene. It's like Luz Potter's eyes and the Mind Probe. That hillside is something we never forget. Once seen, for some reason, that just sticks with us.
Another question about the Blu-ray: is there an audio commentary for the film?
That's not thoroughly decided. I was hoping that there would be. There's one person who is really the top expert on his history, and I don't know whether or not he's available or agreeable to doing the commentary. So keep watching this space.
No, there you go. Well, you could probably do the commentary along with Jimmy.
The problem is, if I did the commentary, I would be borrowing too heavily from this individual who's written the definitive. I think Jimmy knows who I mean, because he interviewed everybody back in the 70s that worked on the film. And so he spoke to cameraman John Seitz and Murray Yerke, the script supervisor, and Boris Levin, the art director, and the actors. And it's, it would not be fair for me to take that man's hard-won research and recycle it myself.
Yeah. Fletcher Williams.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Fletcher Williams asks, how did you secure funding for the restoration? It seems like it's expensive.
It is expensive. I don't know the budget. I was not privy to that, but it was financed privately by Ignite Films. It was not done under a grant or an archive, a gift or any kind of a film foundation grant. It was privately funded by the owner.
Well, you could probably just go to Elon Musk and just restore all of the movies. That he could probably afford that. Goober asks, what software suite was used for restoration?
Let's see, what did they use? The scans were done. See, mostly I believe the scans were a Director 4K. They were done in Europe. I know the shots that we did here, the reels that we did do here, were on a Director. I imagine there's some variety of DRS. I don't have the particular software brand at my fingertips. You'll have to pardon me.
Okay.
There's so much in my brain it can't all stay on active drive. A lot of it gets, filed off into my plug-in hard drive.
I hear you, Scott. Derek Douglas asks, what other sci-fi movies has Scott saved?
See, the only other picture I can think of that has a sci-fi theme that I saved is a Republic film called SOS Tidal Wave from 1939. The nitrate camera negative for that is at UCLA. And it's an odd picture. It's one that I love the description of, and it was impossible to see for years. We had the nitrate negative in the Republic collection, and I pulled it one day to check it and found that it was decomposing. The ends, heads, and tails were rotting out. So we got in touch with Paramount, who now own that library, and had them send in their fine grain, which was made in 1952 at Republic's lab, consolidated. And it's, in its 73rd year, it's got vinegar syndrome. So it was real important that we start working on this right away. The plot is really crazy. It's 1939, and television is everywhere because it was coming at that time. Only World War II prevented us having television by the early 40s. All the research got put off and no implementation till after the war. But they really thought it was going to be there. So the conceit is we all have TV. And there's a mayoral election going on in New York, and the villains, the bad guys, decide they're going to steal the election. And how to do that but use television. It was on the wings of the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast. That was the inspiration. And so they stage a fake newsreel using an old Hollywood science fiction movie to show a tidal wave heading for New York. And everybody runs in panic the day rather than going to the polls. And Ralph Byrd's the main reporter who's following it and all. And someone, they don't name the cities that are already being inundated allegedly or knowing about it. But this one guy looks out and he says, I wonder about this. So he calls another guy at the New York desk and says, what's going on up there? He goes, oh, nothing. We got a little bit of rain, but nothing. And he says, what? So they realize it's a hoax. But meanwhile, the hoax is lifted from a 1933 science fiction picture called Deluge, where a comet approaches the Earth and destroys the world. And then that's the opening 2 reels, and the rest of the film is the gag of survivors post-apocalyptic world. It's what'll happen after climate change has its way.
Yeah.
But for its time, the effects were very spectacular. Ned Mann, who Menzies used on Things to Come, built all the miniatures of Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty, and they had breakaway miniatures and the dump tanks bringing waves in, and Statue of Liberty holding her torch above the water. It looks like a bunch of toys having fun today, but in 1933, it was kind of exciting. That was the same year, of course, King Kong broke ground with special effects. And while the picture was released by RKO, who handled King Kong, it was an independent film produced by Admiral Pictures, and the guys that ran Admiral were among the founders of Republic. So clearly they took the film with them. And the film was lost. It didn't exist from 1940 until recently because they cut the camera negative up into SOS tidal wave. And we've now found a dupe negative in France, and Lobster Films has put it out. Thankfully, the dupe negative has the American soundtrack, so it's all there now. But that was the fate of it. It wound up inside another movie, and
Wow.
that to me is the only other science fiction definitive film I can think of that I've had my nasty little fingers on.
And that Brandon Steinbeck 420 asks, what's your next project, Scott?
I'm in retirement now, and I like playing with my granddaughter and tending to my Jack Russells. And but of course, when Ignite knocked on the door, I was ready. I'd begun discussing the possibility of this with Ignite over a decade ago when I first met Jan Willem, because he was even then interested. I can't recall if he had already located the camera negative or if he found that shortly after. But it was a long time coming. So I'm hoping for my next project.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Well, you have to stay. I'm sure your granddaughter's amazing. She'll understand when you're going to be working on something else now. She'll totally
It's been
understand.
very gratifying to restore a picture like this that I've loved all my life. My very last act at UCLA was to approve and sign off the final 4K master of another one of my favorite films that's been crying out for decades to be restored, and that's All That Money Can Buy with Walter Houston, the Devil and Daniel Webster.
Wow.
And again, we had an 85-minute negative for a 109-minute movie, and we had the German dupe negative and put it all back together, picture and sound, and it looks like it looks wonderful now. And I screened that at the vendor, approved it, got in my car, and drove home. But it was nice to have that picture done under my belt.
Well,
two of the other ones that I enjoyed very much doing were the 2 Warner Brothers Technicolor horror films, Wax Museum and Dr. X, which we did for the Film Foundation in the last few years in early 2-color Technicolor. Again, those are movies I've Wax Museum had been lost until about 1970 when they found a sole print at the studio in Jack Warner's collection, and they've got copied several times, quote, restored, and always looked like garbage. I had been at the initial screening of the nitrate print at Lincoln Center when I was in 10th grade. I bought a ticket through the mail and took the train down that morning and sat through it that afternoon. And I never saw it look that way again until we got the restoration done.
Well, this is amazing to talk to you both, Jimmy Hunt, Scott MacQueen. Just thank you so much for spending time
Jimmy,
with us.
do you have any last thoughts or
Yeah. Final thoughts, Jimmy?
I'm just really happy that they did this and that it came out. I mean, it's kind of fun to kind of be, kind of relive the celebrity type thing. It's been 70 years since we did that. So it's a fun thing. And it's my grandkids and great grandkids, they're all excited about it. And so it was fun. And we had a really great time at the TCM festival. I mean, that was really just a blast. And so again, it's fun to kind of be back, but not have to live that kind of life.
Jimmy, in passing, as you look back, can you tell us how you got started?
Yeah, it was kind of being at the right place at the right time. I was going to school about 6 blocks from MGM. We lived over near the Culver City area of California, and so they were getting ready to shoot a movie, and they needed someone to play the part of Van Johnson as a little boy. And they looked through Hollywood, and they couldn't find anybody that they thought we could do it. So they came to the schools, and myself and a couple other kids got picked out of our class, and we went and we did a screen test. Only thing I can remember about that was the fact that I was like, 6 going on 7. So
but you had red hair and freckles.
I had reddish hair and freckles, yeah, and which I hated both. But anyway, they came. They brought me. My second grade teacher brought me home and told my mom that I needed to go to MGM and for this deal, and that's how it all started. And 42 movies later, I did Hollywood farewell and went and lived a normal life.
It's interesting how you played Leif Erikson's son in Sorry Wrong Number, but you did a picture with Dick Powell and Elizabeth Scott and Jane Wyman called Pitfall, a film noir. And in that movie, you're Dick and Jane's kid, and you wake up in the night with a nightmare, and and Dick Powell comes in and says, "What's the matter, fella?" You say, "Oh, they were at the window. They tried to get me." And he goes, "Where?" And he looks out the window, and you're like, "Well, they're not there now." And as he's trying to calm you down, he picks up a comic book or a science fiction magazine and looks at it and says, "Well, this is what's doing it. No more use for you." And of course, in Invaders, there's the wonderful line where Hillary Brooke is trying to abduct him in her evil self, dressed in black at the police station. And Helena Carter, dressed in white with the red kerchief floating on her heart, is the doctor. She saves him. And Hillary Brooke looks at him and says, "What has he been telling you? He's been reading those trashy science fiction magazines." And I thought, my God, he started this 5 years before with Dick Powell reading them.
The one thing I have to say is the fact that I was there for like 7 years, and in those 7 years, in all those movies I made, I never really had any bad experiences, with directors or with the other actors. Everybody treated me really well, and so it was a good experience for me.
It's great to hear that after you hear so many tales of child actors who were broken by their time in the trenches of Hollywood. And I've never understood why so many of them turn out to have such miserable lives, because you clearly did not. And Richard Eyre did not.
I have to, give credit to my parents.
Exactly, and that's
they-
what it seems to come down to. Yeah.
They were, there was no rhyme or reason for us to be in the movies. I mean, my sister and myself, my parents didn't want us in that area, and so when I got those parts, that we went along with it, and they put the money aside for me to go to college and stuff. And so when I got to that age, I did go to school, and then I joined the Army and went off to Europe for 3 years and intercepted and broke code, which was kind of a cool thing. And met my wife in Germany and brought her home. And we've been together now. We're going to celebrate our 60th wedding anniversary here coming
how nice.
in January.
Well, a quick question for you, Jimmy. Shelby ACS. Oh my gosh, did Jimmy work with Barbara Stanwyck in Sorry Wrong Number?
I met her, but I don't know if I had any really scenes with her.
Okay.
But I did meet her, and I've got some autographed pictures from her where she sent that for us, and so it was kind of cool.
Great. And
Jimmy, somebody has asked that you give us your signature line in closing.
Here we go. Can I just say real quick before you both go? I want to remind people that you can get Invaders from Mars, the original 1953 movie, in a 4K restoration special.
It will be available
DVD.
as a UHD, 4K, and Blu-ray. Your choice of formats.
Exactly, and it's out, and you can, or it's not out. It will be out in September.
In September, yeah.
You can get it from ignite-films.com. And you can just go right there. We'll put the link in the description of this video, but it's also scrolling along the bottom. You can grab yourself a pen and paper. But to take us out, Jimmy, would you someone's asking, Dark Aerofant says, can we get another Gee Whiz? Like right out of the movie, give us a Gee Whiz.
You can have another Gee Whiz. Here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Gee Whiz.
Thank you,
Thank
Jimmy
you.
and Scott. Thank you so much for being here today. It's really just been a pleasure having you here, and I'm so glad that like a movie like that haunted me as a kid. I seriously contributed to nightmares. To see it in this kind of restoration, it really is a labor of love, because I don't know a lot of people who work in film restoration who have butlers. It's what I'm saying is not that there's not money in it, but it's just like this is truly done by people who are passionate and care.
When you're a worker bee in the front lines, you're not making money with a capital M. It's a job like anyone else's. You're able to pay your mortgage and feed your family, and that's about it. But most people that are involved heavily with it, they do it because they love it. And it's an odd thing because film is a very odd muse. It often doesn't give back. I was in production for 10 years, and that was pretty painful. It's not a happy environment. But when you're restoring things that have meaning for you and you want to see them carried on, I think I get particularly emotional when I see a film that's in bad straits that's about to go away, and you got to figure out ways to save it while you can. And when you succeed at that and succeed reasonably well, that's very fulfilling, and it makes it worthwhile. Gee whiz.
Well, I can't keep up with all the people saying, thank you to both of you. So
thank you. I want to tell you, thank you very much, Chris and Alan, for being there and for bringing this back up. It always amazed me how many people that film influenced, and we're going to start on a new generation with this restoration.
I think so.
So we're going to have the parents and the grandparents, the parents, and now the kids, of that era are going to come and enjoy this movie.
Well, you're getting all this love in the chat, but I just want to say, Scott and Jimmy, for me, thank you so much. And Jimmy, you when I was a kid, this movie just blew my mind, haunted me, and to meet you here is just great. So thank you. Everyone in the chat is loving you here. Got over 100 people watching, so thank you again. And I can't wait to see the 4K in September.
It's really great. It really is. It blew my mind, and I think that hurry up and get me some of the first 1,000 so you can get that autograph poster.
That's awesome.
Because I'm going to have to sign each and every one.
Are you signing them now, or are they already signed?
You'll see some poor guy with his hand. It's all.
Well, thank you so much. Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And gee whiz.
Gee whiz.
Can I see the back of your neck?
Later.
Can I see the back of your neck?
Oh no.
Oh wow.
My God, they were great.
That was a
oh
lesson.
My God, that was
a history
fantastic.
Lesson.